Welcome back to Birds of a Feather. This is your daily Baltimore sports podcast. My name is Nathan Stroud, and today we're going to be recapping the Ravens versus Rams game that happened yesterday. I was not able to get the recording or the initial first post-game reaction of the game like yesterday. Had to wait until today to get the episode done, but we are going to be doing the recap of the Ravens versus Rams game. Another disastrous game for the Ravens, another disastrous loss for the Ravens. The Ravens are 1-5 as of right now, and we are now officially heading into our Week 7 bye. So the Ravens will not be playing football this next week. We're going to have to wait until Week 8 before they play their next game against the Bears. But throughout this week, we're going to go over some certain things. If there's any sort of news that happens during the bye, we're going to go over stuff. But I will probably say there's not going to be episodes every single day this next week, just because it is a bye week. And unless there's anything Orioles related that happens or Ravens related that happens, then there's no real need to kind of go over stuff. We are still going to post episodes throughout the week, though. Kind of just talking about, again, the state of the team, where we go from here, what needs to happen in the second half of the year after the bye week to try and get back into the season, because it's going to be a lot. We're going to have to kind of have a miracle here to get through it. But if there's anybody that can drag us out of this mess, it is Lamar Jackson, who is expected to come back in Week 8 after the bye. John Harbaugh said that yesterday. He also confirmed that Roquan Smith is supposed to come back as well. So we are going to have a lot of reinforcements coming back after the bye week. We'll have a lot of injuries coming back after the bye week. And if you look at the game yesterday against the Rams, we had a lot of people come back and play. I will say Ronnie Stanley did kind of re-injure his ankle, so he did limp off the field yesterday. Of course, he's playing on hurt ankle. It's easy to kind of re-aggravate things when you're an offensive lineman. But we did have Kyle Hamilton that came back yesterday. We did have Marlon Humphrey come back yesterday. So we did have some defensive reinforcements come back yesterday. And the first thing that I want to say real quick before we go over this in-depth game recap, the first thing that I want to say is shout out to the defense, because this was the best game that they've played all year. And when their backs were against the wall, up against one of the best offenses in the league. Again, this Ravens team has gone up against a lot of good offenses. They've gone up against the Chiefs, the Lions, the Bills, and then obviously now they're going up against the Lions. I mean, now they're going up against. They're now obviously yesterday went up against the Rams. So they've gone up against a lot of very high-powered offenses, and again, they've given up a lot of points in a lot of games. But I do kind of just want to shout out the Ravens defense yesterday, because they did play. They played their best game of the year. They played solid. They showed a lot of heart and fight. There still was mistakes. There still was guys wide open. There still was, some defensive miscues that we've seen throughout the year. But what I will say is that on short yardage situations and on they were getting to the quarterback. There was pressure on Matt Stafford throughout this game. They did actually record a turnover in this game. Matt Stafford did fumble the football, and John Jenkins did recover it. So there was a lot of heart out there. You could tell that they were playing more physical. You could tell that they were very upset of how they've played throughout this year. And you can tell that they play with a chip on their shoulder. The Rams did score 17 points. I will say that the Ravens offense did put them in some bad situations sometimes, so I don't even want to sit there and say that all the 17 points were all their fault, because the Ravens offense did put them in bad situations. But the only positive in this game is the defense. They played their hearts out. They played well. They gave up 17 points to the Rams, but obviously when your offense only scores 3 points, you're going to lose that game pretty much every single time. So shout out to the defense. They did their best holding the Rams. It was a kind of a muggy game environment as well with the weather. It didn't really favor the passing game that much for either team, so that also did help us a little bit. But they played well. Matt Stafford didn't go out there guns ablaze, and we all thought throughout this week that this Rams offense was going to go out there and put up 80 points on us. I said throughout the week I'd be surprised if they didn't put up 40, and they didn't. They didn't even put up 20 in this game. So shout out to the defense. They played their hearts out. We'll go over some of the drives throughout this game as well and stuff like that. But really a big shout out to the Ravens defense. But the negative in this game is literally everything else that happened in this game is the negative. The offense was a complete disaster. This was one of the worst offensive performances I've ever seen without Lamar Jackson. This arguably might be the worst offensive performance without Lamar Jackson because the 3 points that the Ravens scored yesterday was the lowest amount of points the Ravens have scored in a game since 2010. So it's been, 15 years since the last time that the Ravens scored this little of points in a game. So yeah, one of the worst offensive games we've had in a long time. The offense had 3 turnovers. Cooper Rush threw an interception. Zay Flowers, technically, Cooper Rush had a fumble, but you can argue what the fumble, who gets the blame on that, whether it's Zay Flowers, whether it's Cooper Rush. I think it's more of Zay Flowers' fault, but I understand why they did give it to Cooper. But there was a miscue on a handoff from Cooper Rush to Zay Flowers, which ended up being a fumble. You can blame it on whoever. And then Zay Flowers had a fumble himself. So Zay Flowers was a part of 2 fumbles. And then, obviously, Cooper Rush threw an interception. Cooper Rush is one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen put on a Ravens uniform. He's god-awful. And in any game that Lamar Jackson ever misses ever again for this season, if he happens to, not be ready by week 8, which at this point would be a surprise, but to be honest with you, the fact that Tyler Huntley wasn't in the game sooner is crazy to me, because when we put in Tyler Huntley in the fourth quarter, he did bring a spark to this offense, but again, it was too late and it didn't even matter. But yeah, Tyler Huntley should have been starting over Cooper Rush from the get-go, and or he should have been starting in this game. Once we saw what Cooper Rush did last week, throwing 3 interceptions, and you had Tyler Huntley as well, you should have just put in Tyler Huntley. Because if Tyler Huntley played this entire game, I think the Ravens could have possibly won this game if Tyler Huntley actually was in at the beginning. But, enough of that. Let's just go over this game. So going over this Ravens and Rams game, obviously a very, very disappointing loss. The Rams win 17-3 over the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens lose 17-3. They fall to 1-5 on the season. We can see here on the initial box score that if you go over and look at the Rams really quickly, Matt Stafford was held to only 181 passing yards. We held him to below 200 yards passing, and then the running game wasn't really there either. The Rams had 74 total rushing yards. Kyren Williams had 50 yards. Blake Corum 23 yards. They averaged 3.2 yards a carry. So they didn't have a really good game running the football. The Ravens, on the other end, you look at the Ravens passing. Cooper Rush went 11 for 19 with 72 yards and an interception, and then Tyler Huntley went 10 for 15 with 68 passing yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. So, but Tyler Huntley did get sacked 4 times. Cooper Rush didn't get sacked at all. So when you look here at this Ravens passing game, it was non-existent. There was nothing going on with the passing. They had 117 total passing yards in this game, technically 140 total receiving. Throughout the receivers, which we'll go over in just a second. But going over to the running game for the Ravens, I want to give a big shout-out to Derrick Henry. He had a big bounce-back week. We said it all week long talking about what we needed to do to win this game. I said that we need to get the running game established early, and our defense needs to just give the Rams some trouble. And that is what happened in this game. That's what was going on. The problem with this Ravens team, what was happening earlier in this game, was that they were not taking advantage of anything that the Rams were doing wrong. The Ravens running game was working. It was moving, and then we would get to the red zone, we'd get to the goal line, and we wouldn't be able to punch in scores. A ton of missed opportunities for this Ravens offense when they were moving the ball well. They weren't able to kind of capitalize on certain things, and then when the Rams would make mistakes, we weren't able to capitalize as well. So just a lot of very sloppy football, especially in the first half of this game. It was 3-3 going into halftime of this game. Again, I was very proud of the defense, but the offense had so many opportunities to put up points and really be winning, but they weren't able to do it. But looking at the rushing, Derrick Henry had 24 carries in this game, which is exactly what you wanted to see, for 122 yards. So the running game was able to move the ball well. Tyler Huntley had 39 rushing yards. Justice Hill had 16 yards. And then you can see Mark Andrews had 3 carries for 2 yards. That's because we did the tush push twice at the goal line. We'll go over that in a second when we go over the drives in this game. But I'm not just going to blame Lamar Jackson being out. I am going to say that Todd Monken did not have a great... I mean, okay, look. Obviously, from the get-go of this game, it was very obvious that running the football was a very big thing that we were going to do in this game. And that's what we did. We ran the hell out of the football. We had 37 total carries to 34 total pass attempts. Derrick Henry had 24 carries in this game. That's what you want to see from him all the time. He had 24 carries for 122 yards, averaged 5.1 yards per carry. So, Derrick Henry had himself a day. He did well. He did his thing. He didn't get a touchdown because, Todd Monken, his play calling was a little bit weird. But throughout the season, when the Ravens have gotten to the red zone and gotten especially to the goal line, Todd Monken's play call, it's like his brain turns off because I just don't understand. Like last year, having Derrick Henry, having Lamar Jackson at the goal line, it was automatic every single time. But this year, for some reason, when we get to the goal line, we are not utilizing Derrick Henry at the goal line, and we're trying to do fancy, cute things. Specifically in this game, we got to the goal line. We got to the goal line of this game, and we ran 2 Mark Andrews tush pushes, and we didn't get it on either one of them. Then we went forward on 4th and goal, and we ran him with Derrick Henry up the middle, and they knew exactly what we were doing, and we didn't get it. So, we just try to be cute in certain scenarios, and stuff doesn't work, and it just looks really sloppy when you look at it from a long-term thing. So overall, this Ravens offense in this game, they had the right idea of running the football, but they just were not executing and scoring points when they were getting down in deep in their territory. So just some sloppy play calling from Todd Monken. Again, I like the running game, but again, the passing game was just not there. And I understand you don't have Lamar Jackson, but you look around the league, at other teams that don't have their quarterbacks. For example, the Cardinals yesterday, they played the Colts, and the Cardinals went out there and they lost the game 27-31, but the Cardinals offense without Kyler Murray on short-term notice, by the way, they went out there with Jacoby Brissett as their starting quarterback and went out there and dropped 27 points on the Colts defense, and the Colts defense that has looked solid this year. So just very odd, just very weird how around the Niners, for example, they haven't had Brock Purdy, and they've been able to go out there and perform well. Again, the Cardinals yesterday didn't have Kyler Murray, and they were able to perform well. So, again, you look around the league and you look at teams that don't have their the Commanders, for example. The Commanders didn't have Jane Daniels for 2 games, and I think in one of their games they scored 48 points in one of their games without Jane Daniels. So you kind of just want to have one of those moments where a team and their position players can pop off even without their franchise quarterback. But again, this kind of goes back to how valuable Lamar Jackson really is to this team. When the Ravens don't have Lamar Jackson, this offense completely and utterly crumbles. It did it last week when they scored 10 points against the Texans, and they did it this week when they scored 3 points against the Rams. This offense has scored 13 points in their past 2 games combined, when previously the Ravens were dropping 30, 40 every single game. So, again, very, very disappointing. And again, it really goes back to show how valuable Lamar Jackson really is. And people are starting to kind of see it now, how valuable of a quarterback he is to a team. When you want to talk about value, he is everything to this Ravens team. This entire Ravens team is centered around Lamar Jackson. And that's why I was saying, if Tyler Huntley was starting in this game, again, Tyler Huntley, very similar to Lamar Jackson play style in terms of the running game and his rushing ability. So if you started Tyler Huntley in this game, I do believe that we could have possibly won this game or made it more competitive. But again, I want to give a shout out to the defense for making it competitive in this game. But going over the receivers really quickly in this game, Zay Flowers led the team with 6 catches for 46 receiving yards. Justice Hill had 5 catches for 28 yards. Mark Andrews had 4 catches for 24 yards. DeAndre Hopkins had 2 catches for 20 yards. Derrick Henry had 1 catch for 8 yards. Rashad Bateman had 1 catch for 8 yards. And then Isaiah Likely had 2 catches for 6 yards. So a whole lot of garbage. Nobody passed the 50 receiving yard mark. A whole lot of garbage right there. And going over to the turnovers, Cooper Rush obviously threw an interception. He also got credited with a fumble, and then Zay Flowers also fumbled the football as well. So once again, the Ravens lose a game where they lost the turnover battle once again. Even though the Ravens defense did force a turnover out of the Rams, and the Rams aren't really a team to really turn the ball over. So Matt Stafford's been pretty electric all year, but he did fumble in this game because the pass rush did get to him, and he did force a fumble. So, let's just go over the total team stats in this game. So when you look here really quick, obviously, when you look at just the numbers from a numbers standpoint, the Ravens actually had more total yards than the Rams in this game. The Ravens had 296 total yards of offense, and the Rams had 241 total yards of offense. So the Ravens actually outgained them on offense in this game, but they still only scored 3 points because they were not executing and scoring points when they needed to. But the Rams actually did have one more total drive than the Ravens, 10 drives to 9. The Ravens had 3.9 yards per play. The Rams obviously had more passing yards. We dominated in rushing yards by over 100. The Ravens got sacked more. Obviously, the turnover battle was 3-1 where the Ravens lost that. Time of possession, the Ravens dominated time of possession in this game because the running game was working so well and because we were establishing the running game and keeping the ball out of the Rams' hands. That was another reason why the defense was able to play so well, is because the running game was working so well for the Ravens. We just were not able to execute and down the stretch and score points, which is obviously what you need to do to win football games, as we know. But the Ravens had almost 38 minutes of possession in this game, while the Rams only had 22 minutes. So, again, the Ravens dominated in time of possession. They had more total yards, but they still lose because they lose the turnover battle and they failed to just score points when they got down in the red zone. On third down efficiency, the Ravens were 7 for 17. Fourth down efficiency, the Ravens were 2 for 6. The Ravens ran like 25 more total plays. So just overall very, very frustrating loss because it just felt winnable with how bad the Rams played in this game. But again, the Ravens offense just played far, far, far more worse. But the game started off with a field goal for the Ravens. The Ravens were able to drive down the field, a 12-play, 7-minute drive for 53 yards. And the Ravens went up early with a field goal. Then the Rams kind of drove down the field on a good drive, but they missed a field goal. Then the Ravens threw an interception. Then the Rams fumbled the football. So again, very sloppy football here in the first quarter. A field goal, a missed field goal, an interception, and a fumble by 2 drives from both teams. Then the Ravens turned it over on a turnover on downs, which was just annoying because you go for it on 4th and 3 and Cooper Rush threw it away pretty much. Then the Rams tied it up with a field goal. Then the Ravens punted. Then the Rams punted. Then the Ravens turned it over on downs again. When we got down to the goal line, this is exactly where I was talking about. We were at the Rams 1. Basically, Derrick Henry ran for 10 yards. We were first and goal at the Rams 4. Then Derrick Henry ran for 3 yards. First and goal. Then it was second and goal at the Rams 1. Then we did 2 direct snaps to Mark Andrews. These were 2 tush pushes to Mark Andrews. Didn't get either of them. We went for it on 4th down, and Derrick Henry they sniffed out the run, and Derrick Henry lost 2 yards on the run. So just horrible, horrible play calling there from Todd Monken. And again, we turn it over on downs again. Then we go into the second half of the game, tied 3-3. Then the Rams open up their first drive of the second half with a touchdown. And then the Ravens, at this point, they needed to go out there and really, the Rams went out there, started the third quarter off with a touchdown. I was saying that the Ravens needed to go out there and just respond and tie this game with a touchdown. And then the Ravens fumbled the football. Cooper Rush passed it to Zay Flowers, and he tried to do too much, and then he fumbled. And then this right here was where the entire game turned. The Rams scored a touchdown on the opening drive of the third quarter. Then the Ravens fumbled the football, and then the Rams had the ball again in good territory, and then they scored another touchdown. And then we fumbled again. So this third quarter was the complete thing that completely turned this game around for the Ravens. 2 touchdowns for the Rams and 2 fumbles for the Ravens in this quarter. And then in the fourth quarter, the game was already over. So, because we just knew how the offense wasn't going to do anything. They had 2 turnover on downs in the fourth quarter. So, just very, very, very rough game. Very ugly game for both teams. But the Ravens had a lot of bad moments. Again, an interception, a turnover on downs, a fumble, and then 2 more turnover on downs. That is so ugly. Such ugly football. And they were in this game the entire time. They lost by 14 points. It's not like they got absolutely blown out of the water, but when you only score 3 points, it does make it look very, very bad on you. But again, the Ravens lose this game. They're 1-5. They are currently. Let's go over to the where is it? Am I dumb? The standings, real quick. So when we look at the standings here, everyone else is doing their thing. The Bills and this division's looking very fun. The Bills and Patriots, fighting for the division. But when you look at the AFC North here, the Steelers are currently 4-1. The Bengals are 2-4, the Ravens are 1-5, and the Browns are 1-5. So if you're a Steelers fan, you are absolutely loving how this season is going for you. The Steelers are looking like the team that's going to run away with this division unless the Ravens can have a huge second half comeback into the season, which I still think is possible. Especially with the way that the defense fought in this past game. They showed fight. They showed me that they can possibly turn it around. Even with Zach Gore as the defensive coordinator, I still do think that we should move on from him, but that's whatever. We are going to be playing a lot of easy teams here on paper in these next few weeks after the bye. So we'll look at the schedule in just a second because the Ravens do have a lot of very easy games. The remainder of games for the Ravens is extremely, extremely easy, and they really could go on a nice, long winning streak here to try and get back into the season and make the wild card. But I will say if they do lose to the Bears out of the bye, I think that they should probably they really cannot afford to lose another game, honestly, for the rest of the year, at least until the end of the year. So the Ravens really can't afford to lose any more games. They've already lost 5 games 6 weeks into the season, so they've really got to be careful. Any 2-3 more losses and you've pretty much the season's pretty much over. So, but I do believe that we can come back into the season because again we understand how good Lamar Jackson is, and also the teams that we're facing are very easy. So, the Steelers are 4-1 right now. They're winning the division by quite a bit. The second place team is the Bengals, who are 2-4, and they are kind of in the same situation that we're in. They are doing nothing without Joe Burrow, so they're 2-4. The Ravens are 1-5, and the Browns are 1-5. But obviously, as of right now, the Ravens are probably the team that could make the comeback into this year. Because if we go here and we look at the schedule for the Ravens for the remainder of this season, they lose to the Bills. They beat the only win of the season was against the Browns, but they lose to the Bills. They beat the Browns. They lose to the Lions. They lose to the Chiefs. They lose to the Texans. They lose to the Rams. So they've lost 4 in a row as of right now. We're going into our bye on a 4-game losing streak, but we are going to be getting Lamar Jackson back per John Harbaugh, and we are going to be getting Roquan Smith back. So all of our major injuries, obviously other than Madubuike because he's out for the year, but everybody else should be good to go. We're going to get Ricard back. We should be fully healthy as much as we can be and good to go heading into Week 8. That is what gives me hope for this season. And also with how good they played against the Rams. If they can bring that same heart and passion that they just played against the Rams on defense, and if they can factor that for the rest of the year, and the offense can go back to being what they were over the first 4 weeks of the season with Lamar, or first 3 weeks of the year when Lamar Jackson was healthy, then I think that we'll be in good hands. Because coming out of the bye week, we play the Bears. The Bears are a solid team. Caleb Williams is looking good. Ben Johnson, you can tell he's really turned this Bears team around. They're currently 2-2. Their defense isn't looking great, so that's one of those games where the Bears' defense does not look good at all. So the Ravens should be able to feast with Lamar Jackson coming back against the Bears. And we're playing a lot of bad defenses here in the next the first 3 weeks coming out of the bye. The Bears defense, horrible. The Dolphins defense, horrible. So we play the Bears, then we play the Dolphins on the road. Then we play the Vikings on the road. Then we play the Browns on the road. If we just take those 4 games right there, the hardest game of those 4 is by far the Bears. The Bears, they're a solid team, and the Bears are going to be one of those games where we kind of have to beat the Bears, because if we fall to 1-6, then we really might need to pack it up, to be honest with you. But when we get all these guys back, we play the Bears. If we can beat the Bears, then we play the Dolphins, Vikings, and we play the Dolphins. Hold on, now that I'm looking at the schedule is so light. And I might say that now, and I might get clipped later and coming out of context, but when you look, like, we're going to have this Ravens team pretty much fully healthy with Lamar Jackson, so you have to put that into account. We play the Bears, then we play the Dolphins, the Vikings, the Browns, the Jets, and then the Bengals. If you take that, the 6-game stretch here between Bears, Dolphins, Vikings, Browns, Jets, Bengals, that 6-game stretch right there, if you take that 6-game stretch, they should go 6-0 in that stretch right there. And if they can go 6-0 in those, they will be favored in every single one of those games. And like the Browns defense is tough, the Jets defense is pretty tough. The Vikings defense can be tough as well, but the Bengals defense is easy, the Bears defense is easy, and the Dolphins defense is easy. So they will be favored in all of those games. Cleveland's obviously dealing with a huge quarterback problem. The Vikings have been a mess, even with J.J. McCarthy. The Dolphins are a mess. The Bears are solid, but we still should be favored in that game. And then the Bengals, obviously, without Joe Burrow, are a complete disaster. So when you look at that 6-game stretch right there, the Ravens in that 6-game stretch, that 6-game stretch right there is going to be the most important 6-game stretch of the season. Because if they can go 6-0 in those games, they will be 7-5 heading into Week 14 against the Steelers. And at that point, we'll see what the Steelers' record is by that point. If the Steelers are like 10-1 or whatever, like if the Steelers like continue to win games and are on like a super big hot streak, which I hope they won't be, then we'll see what the Steelers' record is going into that game. But then we play the Steelers, which is going to be a hard-fought game, which they always are against Pittsburgh. So we'll see what happens there. Then they play the Bengals again. Then they play the Patriots, who have been solid. Patriots have actually been looking really good. Then the Packers, who look very good. And then the Steelers again. So when you look at these last 5 games of the year, you have Pittsburgh twice, you have Cincinnati, New England, and Green Bay. Very tough games. Other than, like, the Bengals probably will have Joe Burrow back, honestly, by then. So these last 5 games are going to be tough. But if they can get through these last 5, like, let's say they go 6-0 here, and then in the last 5 games, if they can go 3-2 or 4-1 in those last 5, we could get into the playoffs as a wild card, or we can get in and win the division. So the goal, in my opinion, is still to win the division. It all is going to depend on how Pittsburgh does for the rest of the year. So we're going to have to, like, obviously, like, starting next week for the Steelers, because the Steelers next week play, I think they play this Thursday, actually, against the Bengals. So I'm going to be a big Bengals fan this week, rooting for them against the Steelers, because we need the Steelers to do as bad as they can before we play them in Week 14. So heading into Week 14, we need the Steelers to lose as many games as possible, and we obviously probably need the Ravens to go 6-0 in that 6-game stretch, which I really think is possible. So going over to the Steelers, I actually want to look at the Steelers' schedule and see if they have any games here. So they play the Bengals on they just had their bye week as well last week, so they don't have a bye for the rest of the year. So they play the Bengals on Thursday, which they probably will win that. Then they have a 3-game stretch against really good football teams in Green Bay, Indianapolis, and the Chargers, who have all been playing very good football. So we're going to be really rooting against the Steelers there. They got like, what, 3 primetime games the next 4 weeks. So they're going to be under a lot of pressure on that primetime spotlight. So we're going to be rooting against the Steelers as much as we possibly can here over the next like 5, 6, 7 weeks. So they play the Bengals, then they play the Packers, the Colts, the Chargers, the Bengals again, and then the Bears, and then the Bills. So they play the Bills right before they play us. So their next, 7 games are a lot harder than the Ravens' 6-game stretch after their bye. So they've got a lot tougher of a schedule. We're really going to be rooting against them. If they can kind of go on a little bit of a collapse here and the Ravens can start doing their thing, which I do think is possible, then I really do think it's possible, because it'll be a fight for the division in the last 4 or 5 games of the year. So we'll see what position we're in by then. But again, the Ravens have to win these stretch of games after the bye week. Those 6 games after the bye, they got to knock off all 6 of them. I'm not going to lie. And the Steelers got to drop some of these games to Green Bay and the Colts and the Chargers and the Bills. They got to drop some of those games. So we'll be tuned in and following the Steelers closely, and then obviously we're going to be tuned in following the Ravens closely, because if we're going to get back into the season, I don't know if we're going to get in as a wild card, but we could still get in as a division winner. But again, it all depends on how the Steelers do over these next few weeks, because the Steelers have put themselves in a good position right now. They're 4-1. They haven't really dropped any bad games. They've been playing good football, so shout out to them. But there is holes in that Steelers team. There is holes in this offense. There's holes in this defense. And hopefully these really good teams that they're going to be playing are going to take advantage of that. And hopefully the Steelers can drop some of these games and the Ravens can obviously go on a good stretch. But again, thank you guys so much for tuning into and listening to this episode of Birds of a Feather. If you like this content, make sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow up on Spotify. Also, make sure to click the link in the bio of whatever platform you're listening on to check out the Twitter, check out the Instagram. Make sure to give all those a follow. I appreciate all of you guys so much. We'll have an episode up probably tomorrow or the next day, kind of just talking about the state of the team, any sort of news we hear from the team. There was a report from John Harbaugh after the game yesterday that he does not expect and does not think that any sort of coaching changes is going to happen over the bye. So we'll see what happens there. We'll see if the Ravens go out there and make any trades. But all I'm going to say is, and John Harbaugh was very optimistic about it as well. We are getting reinforcements back. We are getting Lamar Jackson back. This season, there's still time to turn the season around, but they've really got to win these games. Like, obviously, there was a ton of pressure on this Ravens team. They understand how important the season is. They understand that next year they are going to look worse as a team on paper. So they understand how important capitalizing on this talent is this year. But they are going to get reinforcements back. Hopefully everyone can lock in during the bye week, figure things out. When it comes to the defense, just lock in. The defense needs to lock in, figure things out, come together as a team, and really rally together as a team going to the second half of the year, because the way that our schedule is looking for the rest of the season, especially for the first 6 games out of the bye, we can really get back into this thing. But everyone's going to have to be playing their part, and everyone's going to have to be doing their thing, and we really cannot afford to have any sort of major mistakes or like 2-3 game slips here in these next 6 games especially. We really can't afford to have a lot of mistakes for the rest of the season, to be honest with you. We've already made a ton of mistakes this year. They've really got to be on their stuff for the rest of the year. But again, there is still time to get back into the season, but it just is adding more and more pressure just because of how bad the start has been. So I do believe in this team still. I obviously believe in Lamar Jackson to do his thing. And maybe this was part of the script all along. Maybe going through all these, adversity and troubles earlier on in the season really could be something that opens it up to our team and is some holes that we can fix to be better in the future. So hopefully this entire thing was a learning experience. And the reason why I'm saying is because I do not expect the Ravens to play this bad of football for the rest of the season. I expect it to be very, very good football for the rest of the year moving forward. At least a lot better than I saw over the past 2 weeks. Getting Lamar Jackson back obviously changes everything regarding this Ravens team. But the past 2 weeks were a disaster. Obviously, the loss to the Bills in Week 1 was a disaster. The loss to the Lions, I wouldn't say the loss to the Lions was a disaster because the Lions did just play very well in that game. The Ravens didn't really beat themselves other than like the fumble. But the Ravens' defense earlier on in the season has been a disaster. You look at Week 1, you look at Week 3, you look at Week 4, you look at Week 5. But getting Lamar Jackson back changes everything with this team. I do believe in them coming back. I hope y'all do too. We'll see what ends up happening. They cannot afford to have any major mistakes anymore. They should have gotten all their mistakes past them already. We're sitting at 1-5 right now. Anything is possible in the NFL. We'll see if we can go on a stretch. I'm expecting them to go on with Lamar Jackson, with Roquan back, with Kyle back, with Marlon back. I'm expecting this defense and this team and this offense to lock in here over these next 6 games after the bye. We're going to talk about it a lot throughout the week. We're going to talk about it a lot throughout the rest of the season as these next 6 weeks go on after the bye, because that's how important that stretch is. I believe in this team coming back. I'm optimistic about it, but they got to be on their stuff. They got to be ready to go. They got to be playing as a team, and they really got to just have their spirits up. They cannot be a loser mentality. They have to have the energy and the confidence in each other that they can come back into the season. But we'll see what ends up happening. It's gonna be a wild ride as we follow this team throughout the rest of the year. But they have a chance to really do something historical. They have a chance to really get back into the season and really have a massive turnaround. But we'll see what ends up happening. I said the same thing about the Baltimore Orioles, and that didn't happen. And also one more thing that I want to mention before this episode ends. It's scary to me how similar the Ravens and the Orioles season has been. And it's weird because I just started this podcast on opening day of the Orioles season this past year. And it's just weird how similar their seasons have been with the injuries and the underperforming. So we'll see what ends up happening. Like the pitching for the Orioles was trash. The defense for the Ravens, it's weird. It's weird how similar it is. But I'll see you guys in the next episode. You have a great rest of y'all's day. Go O's, go Ravens, of course, and I'll see y'all later. Peace out.